Welcome back. Today we're going to work on the fuel system on our F100.
I've got all what I think are the right fittings that we need. 30 foot of hose, the wrong tools, fuel pressure regulator and gauge, filter mount. I mean, should go great. The first thing you want to do whenever you pick out what kind of fuel system you're going to use, which we chose the PTFE because it works with almost any fuel. And it's a little smaller than normal AN type hose, and I really like this nylon braid, much softer on your skin and abrasion resistant, and you don't get cut near as easy as you do with braided stainless steel. You should always map out your fuel system, even if you have to draw it, to know what all to order, because you'll be surprised that you'll short yourself a fitting or two no matter what. Or you'll do like I did and order the stuff from Amazon, and they'll send you 3 of the correct size and 1 wrong one, even though you ordered 4 of the same part number.
But you know, you'll get that on these big jobs. One of the first things you want to do is mount any of the hard parts like a filter or your fuel pump along the frame before you start measuring and cutting these fuel lines, because I can promise you this PTFE is not fun to cut and install the fittings on it. There's lots of videos out there that show you kind of the smart way to do it if you have the right tools, which I think we've established that I in fact do not have the right tools. It's pretty likely that I'll end up installing and removing these lines several times just to make sure that the links are correct before we terminate them. Now I found it kind of helpful just to use like 1 wrap of masking tape, because that stuff's pretty thin, and that'll allow this nut, which has that nice flare on it, sort of assists getting there are some stainless braids on the inside lining of this, but you want to be able to get this over your line before you install that ferrule, aka the olive, onto this white or clearish plastic, which is the PTFE. This is the olive. And it's really important to get a nice clean cut, which they probably make much better cutters. I like that die grinder just because I have it. And then the taper side of this is going to go towards the length of hose. So you're going to want to make sure that this PTFE is still got a nice circle to it and it's not been crushed. Otherwise you get some kind of a tool like a punch. I happen to have something from my air chisel that'll kind of round that back out, but you don't want to stretch it before you get this olive on there, or you'll never get it to go over the top. Now that went nice and easy. And then I'll use trusty body hammer and can just sort of tap that, and then you can see that the PTFE is in there flush. Some people will turn it upside down and smash it onto a table or something, but I kind of like this method. Seems to work okay for my means. And then here's your fitting, which is going to insert inside the PTFE, and just make sure that the olive doesn't come up off of there. Just rotate it a little. That dropped in there nicely. And then you're going to want to put some kind of a lubricant, like a spray silicone, which is, I don't know, I hold it over a trash can and just try to get like a drop on there. Always put way too much. Keep a rag handy, just kind of blot that. Otherwise you're going to have silicone all over your fingers. And the hopes and dreams would be that this would climb right over the top of that portion, but you can see it goes up the ramp of that ferrule. Best to put this section in a vise and be able to turn this down with aluminum wrenches. So I'm going to carefully, oh so carefully, remove that piece of masking tape, because believe it or not, that is a little bit of material that we need out of our way. And you can take a razor blade and maybe trim off any of that extra nylon braid that may be sticking up far enough to hang up into your threads. They make aluminum jaw inserts. That way you're not scuffing this up or oblonging it, which also I don't have. So what I've tried to do is use a wrench and some down pressure like this and get that thing to start. Nice and square. You'll feel it when it starts. The resistance is immediate. Now that's ran down on there. I may have chewed a little bit of the anodizing off, but it's still aluminum and it's not going to rust. So that's a ton of work. It's maximum effort, to be honest with you, but when it's done, you should have a good seal that will withstand any kind of fuel, including E85. So hopefully that works. Now before we install it, since I did that in earlier, it's a good idea to run some compressed air through every bit of your stuff before you finish your fuel system, because when you're cutting this and some of those braids may end up inside this line, it's pretty likely it will, you're going to end up sending that into a fuel injector or prematurely clogging up your filter. Now we can keep working our way forward, adding the fittings, leaving everything loose, because that return line is going to go all the way up to the bottom of our fuel pressure regulator. So I'm going to kind of make sure that that regulator is mounted where it needs to be before I go putting an end on the other side of this return line. Alright, so we've got our lines from the back pretty well cut and ran. Now I need to finish up on this intake. This will be our return side. So we'll send the fuel pump into the other rail. We'll build a crossover for the front of the intake, and the fuel will come back. And from here we'll put a little loop, and that will give us pressure to this input side. Our regulator will set to keep 60 psi in these rails, and then the rest will come out of the bottom of the regulator and back into the return side of the fuel tank. This piece turned out really nice. That'll give us plenty of room for motion on this engine. Now we got one left for the front. We'll have to take the intake off and we'll set it on the bench and do this front crossover. Now, so far, of course I've still got these two to do. I've only torn up one fitting. Luckily, thanks to Amazon, I can usually have stuff here the next day. But my conclusion about running this PTFE is this: if you can find someone else to build the lines, do it. Give them your measurements, give them what angles you need, or buy the fittings and have them do them. My fingers hurt like crazy. Like I said, I've screwed up one of the fittings already, so that's going to cost me $7 or $8. I still have no idea if any of them are going to leak, or if all of them are going to leak. Not trying to be pessimistic, just trying to be realistic. Also, while we're discussing these, I went with the -6 size because I think it was Holley, according to Holley. That's good to like 700 horsepower. So people that think they need the big -8 or -10 fuel fittings, well, you're building something more powerful than I am. Thanks to Amazon, our new fitting made it. So we've got that installed. And I've got the hoses routed where they're gonna be, but I haven't started fastening them down. My confidence level in no leaks is pretty low, to be honest. So let's get these things routed, get them fastened up. I've got fuel in the tank. I've got a battery charger ready to go. We're gonna pressure test this bad boy. All right, so I've got a 10 amp fuse in this. I don't recommend wire nuts, but for this test purpose, it should be fine. I think everything's set. We'll find out quickly if it's not. And I'm gonna run this on the 20 amp setting. I hear hissing sounds. Okay, that's at our regulator. Looks like it's leaking at the gauge a little bit, of all places. That's only at 20. Injectors look good. All right, let's see what happens when we turn it up a little. All right, so there's 60, but I don't see anything on any of our PTFE fittings or on the fuel rail itself. It's good news. Back at the filter, everything's dry. These fittings are dry. Shut this down. Honestly, that's a pretty successful test. The only thing we've got to deal with is that gauge on our fuel pressure regulator. So we'll probably need to let that drain down. Then I'll back it out and put some Teflon tape on it, or PTFE tape, and then thread it back in, and we'll give it another test. That's a pretty simple fix. I did go ahead and snug down this set nut so we can keep that fuel pressure from making any movements. Got it all tidied up now with our hose keepers. And of course there's our filter. And then there's some heat shrink or heat shield on those lines as they'll go over where the exhaust will be in the future. Fuel system's marked off the list, and man, what a relief. I'll tell you, that's some pretty good stuff from Hot Rod Fuel Hose. Most of the rest of it was like Evil something or other, I don't know, Evil Energy from Amazon. When they give it to me, I'll remember. I had as much in this fuel system as I did buying my first car when I was like 12 or 13. It's shocking to me how much it costs when you want to do things right. But I appreciate you guys watching. If you've made it this far, click like and subscribe and do that kind of thing. Or not. Appreciate you watching anyway. See you later.